Hello everyone, it's nice to be back. I'm happy to announce my new series on the Balkan civilizations. If I had to name one thing I took out of my research, is that the Balkans were apparently never a place where different people went along just fine with one another without conflict. Yet, this is exactly what makes the ancient Balkans so exciting. The bottom of the region was occupied by countless Greek city-states. There are so many, not only here but a bit all over Europe. They are very interesting, but I'd rather postpone them and talk about the Greeks on a series of their own. So for now, let's put them aside. Next we have the Macedonians, the Kingdom of Epirus, the Odrysian Kingdom held by the Thracians, the Dardanian Kingdom, the Illyrians, the various Celtic tribes that stuck around like the Triballis, Cordici and Tylis, and finally the topic for today's video, the Dacians. Buckle up because these people do not joke around. This is the history of the Kingdom of Dacia. The Dacians were part of the Indo-Europeans that settled on the western part of the Black Sea coast in the 3rd millennium BC. They spent the first 2000 years of their stay there by mingling with the pre-Indo-Europeans that already lived there and slowly developing their own culture. The people that lived in today's Bulgaria and Romania developed the Thracian culture, but only 500 years later, both Thracians from the opposite sides of the Danube were influenced by other cultures. The southern Thracians were influenced by the Hellenic civilizations like Macedonia and the Greeks, and the northern Thracians got closer to the Scythians. And so, by the Iron Age, the Dacian culture was born out of a mix between Thracian and Scythian culture. The Dacians had pretty good relations and cultural affinity with the Scythian and the Thracians alike, especially the latter, but the Dacians were not homogeneous among themselves. If you pay attention to the physical characteristics of Romania, you will notice a long range of mountains splitting the country in half. The southern and eastern side of the country was occupied by the more Scythian-like Dacians, like the Getae. The other was occupied by the Dacians, that were also influenced by the Celtic neighbors, particularly Latinist Celtic culture. The Apuli were one of the biggest tribes to follow this trend. This exchange of influence appeared in the 3rd and 2nd century BC. During this time, there was a huge Celtic migration through the Balkans. Some of these Celts settled around, some others traveled a bit further east, but that's a whole other video. Aside of these minor differences, the Dacians had a lot to share among themselves, and they often united under a powerful leader who was able to reunite them all under one banner. Ancient Gallic historian Gnaeus Pompeius Trogus attributes the title of the first Dacian king to Rubobostes, who in 168 BC kicked out some Celts from Transylvania. However, not much else is known about him, probably because Rome was too busy to fight Macedon to give a damn. The time the Romans started to give a damn was in the middle of the 1st century BC, when King Burebista arrived. The time Burebista came to power is debated. These two have been fighting over it for weeks. What we do know is that he was able to unify all the Dacian tribes in a somewhat united confederation with him as a king. He built a lot of fortresses and basically conquered and sacked most of its neighbors. Thracians, Celts, Astarnae, none were safe. His expansion was fast and impressive. Burebista was assassinated in 44 BC by his political rivals, just like Julius Caesar. The two actually were aware of each other's existence and could have met if they had been alive a little longer. After his death, the United Kingdom of the Dacians shrank in size and even fractured for a bit until a new king called Cotizo took over. The amount of Dacia that Cotizo had power upon probably wasn't even close to the whole of Dacia, but he still considered the king of Dacia at the time, or at least he considered himself the king of Dacia. After Burebista's death, most Dacian tribes went on the defensive, fearing Roman expansion in the region, but this didn't stop them from the occasional raids in Moesia and Pannonia. Cotizo is mostly remembered for the role he had during the Roman Civil War between Mark Antony and Augustus. He aligned with Mark Antony, and he proved to be a very clever man, by giving him advice that if he had followed, he probably would have died a little later. Nevertheless, he married one of Mark Antony's daughters, so he can't really complain, except he should, because when Mark Antony lost the civil war, Augustus sent his legions under Marcus Vinicius to beat him in a battle. He succeeded, and Cotizo died right then and there in the year 9 BC. He was followed by King Comanches, also called the Priest King, but he didn't do anything and died sometime in the 30s AD, so let's move on. King Scorillo was a bold king who often hosted raids in Moesia. He became such a nuisance for the Romans that Tiberius and Caligula offered to pay tribute so they would stop, though I don't think he ever did. In 69 AD, he made an alliance with the Roxolani, who lived in today's Ukraine, to invade Rome during the crisis of the Four Emperors. However, the alliance had very poor timing, because just as they crossed the Danube, they met with Lunicius Mucianus, a Roman general allied with Vespasian, who was just passing through Moesia and just casually repelled the invasion. Scorillo died that same year. As Scorillo left the scene with little dignity, came Duras, his brother. Duras was the first king after Burebista to unite Dacia into a stronger confederation and was able to expand north again, and even south. In his invasion of Moesia, he killed the governor Oppius Sabinus, and then caught General Cornelius Fuscus in an ambush after faking a retreat back across the Danube. However, Duras had grown old by that point and handed the throne to his nephew, supposedly Scorillo's son, Decebalus. Decebalus was one of the greatest and best documented Dacian kings. There is a lot to say on Decebalus's military campaigns and in Dacian culture and society during his reign. For that reason, I'm going to dedicate a whole video on it, that being part 2 of this very video, expected to come out next week. Sorry about the abrupt interruption, but I really wanted to post something by today and get this weight off my shoulders. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.